All right, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and today we are going to be going over Tales of the Empire, the second season of the Tales series that Lucasfilm Animation introduced with Tales of the Jedi. These are collections of short stories that follow two main protagonists. Before I even jump into the review, I do want to just touch on the format of Tales first, because it's something I was critical about during Tales of the Jedi, and I am still critical about having seen Tales of the Empire. I feel that the format that they've locked themselves into is very limiting. I understand that they want to tell short stories, but I feel some of the arcs that they're trying to convey over these 3 episodes are very ambitious for the amount of time they're allotted. And I don't see why it has to be 2 characters with 3 episodes each. I think some of these characters can deserve 6 full shorts or 2 super long shorts. I just don't think Disney and Lucasfilm Animation should corner themselves into this structure that, we have to do 2 characters. We have to only give them 3 episodes. I think they should move away from that and just let the creators be as creative as possible and explore as much of these characters as they want. Just wanted to get that out of the way up front. I'll probably bring it back up a couple times throughout as I talk through this series. Tales of the Empire follows Morgan Elsbeth and Barriss Offee, 2 characters that I was shocked to see revealed being the leading characters of this series. That's not to say I wasn't excited. I actually was more excited by the fact that these weren't 2 mainstay characters or 2 characters that would obviously draw the most eyes. It made it feel like it was a decision coming from the creative side of things and maybe not the business side of things. Because no offense, we know animation doesn't get as many eyes as live action, and we also know that Disney is trying to always sell Disney Plus to more people. So it's very shocking that Disney didn't say, oh no, put Ben Solo, no, put Luke Skywalker in the next season of Tales. So that got me really excited, and I actually had really high expectations. Not because I was particularly the biggest fan of Morgan Elsbeth. I think she was very one note in Mandalorian and Ahsoka and was very much more of a obstacle for our heroes to overcome and less of a rounded character herself. But I thought that actually gave her a lot of opportunity to be fleshed out. How did she join the Empire? How did she get into power? How did she find out about Thrawn? How did she find out about the Night Sister maps to different galaxy? All of these were really cool questions that I wanted them to address. On the Barriss Offee side, I was really excited to see her join the Inquisitorius and see her fall down that dark path, because we didn't know what happened to her after she was arrested and put in jail. And I don't think many of us expected to get a continuation of her story. And so with the stage set here with both of these characters and what I was expecting, this series disappointed me in a lot of ways. There were definitely parts of it I thought were really well executed. I loved some of the themes that we got across the shorts. I thought the animation and the music was absolutely beautiful. I have no idea how the Kiner brothers have scored Ahsoka, Bad Batch, and now Tales of the Empire all within a year. It's absolutely incredible. Each score feels distinct and true to the characters and the story that they're inhabiting, but also feeling Star Wars in all the right ways. So always a huge shout out to the Kiner brothers for their Star Wars scores. And the animation feels like a step up even to Bad Batch, which already was looking incredible. The lighting effects, even the soil, sounds dumb to say, but the soil effects that they have in this series, the much more dynamic and dense foliage on the ground, is such a far cry from the early seasons of Clone Wars where everything was very, very flat. So I absolutely love the upgrades they made here, and I am praying to God that the next animated series we see implements these upgrades on a regular basis. But getting back to what disappointed me about this series, it really comes down to Morgan Elsbeth's episodes starting on a high note with the genocide of the Night Sisters with Grievous. I think we all expected that to be the best episode, but unfortunately, after that, it keeps going downhill. Her interaction with Thrawn is really cool. I really enjoyed how Thrawn is assembling this motley crew of people around him within the Empire, with Rook, the one lieutenant that found Morgan Elsbeth, and now Morgan Elsbeth. They're all people you wouldn't expect to be in the Empire, And that just makes Thrawn seem even more calculated, that he goes outside the means of the Empire to accomplish his goals. So I absolutely love that. But the final episode of Morgan Elsbeth just feels inconsequential. I know it's supposed to wrap up her story that her world has been burning and now she's angry and hateful towards the world and she's getting her revenge against the world. She's not doing this for the Empire. But I feel that theme could have been conveyed in much more nuanced ways throughout her 3-episode arc. In the second episode, I would have much rather seen her come into power as the magistrate of this planet, how she came into power, how that fire and that experience as a teenager fueled her to be ruthless and take over and become this entrepreneur on the Outer Rim. I think that would have been much more interesting than just dropping us in and having her already be hated by the townsfolk. And then the last episode, we kind of already know where it's going to go. She destroys the New Republic people, and we see her burn the forest, and that's where we pick up in Mandalorian Season 2. But with that episode, I much rather would have seen her discussing plans with Thrawn and what his ultimate goals were and why those goals also align with hers, because she wants to get revenge against the world, and maybe Thrawn sees that as an asset because she will do anything he says to give her power. So naturally she aligns with him. But I think the magical aspects of the Night Sisters could have been explored and how Thrawn gets interested in them, especially since we see him so dead set on learning about them in Ahsoka. He even is going straight to Dathomir at the end of the Ahsoka series. That all feels much more interesting than what we got with these 3 episodes. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I really want to drill this point home. The 3-episode structure here and the nature of these shorts and the time that we get with them is very limiting to have these much more broad looks at a character arc. And look, they proved that they can do it with Dooku last season, where every episode he grew closer and closer to the dark side, and ultimately in the final episode, he fully embraces it, kills Yaddle, and joins Palpatine. Why his arc works more than Barriss's and Morgan's this season is because every episode was building on the previous one, and there was a foundation for every step he took. With Morgan, the 3rd episode doesn't exactly build on the 2nd episode. She's already the same person she is in the 2nd episode as she is in the 3rd episode. And the 1st episode is the only one where we get a foundation and a building block. Everything else is just a plateau from there. Moving on to Barriss Offee and really diving into her episodes, I feel that her redemption arc, which was shocking for me, I did not expect them to do a redemption arc. I really thought we were just going to see her go darker and darker to the point where she dies in the field as an Inquisitor, and all of her ideals and everything she fought for, she really, in the end, dies for nothing, which would be a very sad and dark finale for her character, but I thought that's what they were building for. But they flip it on its head, and they actually give her a redemption arc. But unfortunately, redemption arcs take time, and it's very hard to do a 180 within 3 episodes, especially within 2 episodes, actually. And as I said in the beginning, or maybe I didn't say this in the beginning, but I love the concepts and the themes of Barriss's arc. It is very Star Wars, the redemption from the darkest point, bringing along other people and redeeming them on your journey as well. It's all beautifully Star Wars. But I think it's extremely ambitious to do over 3 episodes. And when these episodes are only about 20 minutes and there's significant time jumps in between, it could feel very rushed and very staggered. So if we look back at where we left off with Barriss Offee at the end of Clone Wars, where she had just committed a terrorist act at the Jedi Temple, killing Jedi and innocent civilians that worked at the temple as an act of rebellion and an act of protest against the Jedi losing their way, we know that she has a good intention in her heart. And every person that slips to the dark side, there's good intention there. But she was slipping into the dark side. She even fights Anakin, and she has the 2 red blades, and she says, "I think these suit me," and gives like an evil smile. So we know she's falling further and further into the dark side, even though we know inside she did it for the right reason. Where we pick up in Tales of the Empire, she feels like a bit of a different character, and I say that as in she feels extremely naive, She doesn't feel as perceptive as she was in the Clone Wars, and she feels just way too innocent compared to what we know her to be. And while I do think all of those things are true, the first episode here does a great job of putting her back against the wall. She has to do this Inquisitor training and kill a fellow Jedi because it's survival. If she doesn't, she knows they'll kill her. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's the right thing. But if anyone was to be put in that situation, you would likely act similarly to her. So you can understand why she would fall deeper to the dark side here, because it's out of necessity. Where I think the series stumbles is the next episode. We immediately see her in the field for the first time. This is her first mission out as an Inquisitor with the fourth sister. At least we're led to believe this is her first mission. Because if it isn't, she feels way too naive when they get there and the fourth sister starts to inquire about the Jedi. And the fourth sister gets very violent and murders the entire village, which on paper, again, is brutal. It's great. It's really tense. Some of the most brutal stuff we've seen in Star Wars ever. And I really mean that. But Barriss feels like a character that is way too innocent in all this. She's like, why are we killing people? We're just here to get a Jedi. But we all know that the Inquisitor training and indoctrination is much more intense than simply just passing the trial. And by the end of the first mission, she already leaves the Inquisitorius. She pushes the fourth sister off the cliff and saves this Jedi that's just trying to survive. I think that leap over only about 14 minutes of storytelling is a bit too fast. And that's not to imply that Inquisitors are these mindless dogs of the Empire and they can't think for themselves. I think the idea of a redemption arc for an Inquisitor is, once again, really good in concept. But I feel like we needed an episode just to stew in her presence in this world and this new role that she's stepped into. And I think the 3-episode limit that Tales of the Empire and Tales of the Jedi have put onto these stories was very restrictive to having that arc feel more earned. But regardless, we jump into the third and final episode of Barriss's arc. She has become an enlightened Force healer living in the mountains as a sage and mysterious figure who helps weary travelers. And this was a jarring jump of time. We see she has wrinkles, and we see that she has reached this enlightened state. Again, I think the structure here makes this a little bit hard to swallow when you first jump into this episode. But I think overall, I enjoyed this episode a lot. I loved the Star Wars themes in this episode, the redemption of the fourth sister, who became my favorite part of Tales of the Empire over the 6 episodes, which is not a great sign when the secondary character of one of the arcs is more interesting than the main character of the other arc, talking about Morgan Elsbeth in this case. But the fourth sister's journey is so interesting. She starts off the arc as the Grand Inquisitor's right hand in recruiting and vetting new Inquisitors. And I think what they do with her arc is very smart because they plant these seeds early. There's very nuanced hints at Lynn's past, that she was this respected Jedi Knight. One of the first things Barriss says to her is she calls her by her original Jedi name. She says, Lynn. And the fourth sister's like, don't call me that. We see that she is running from her past. She's trying to get rid of all of the elements of her past life, especially her old name. And she's like, no, I'm the fourth sister. I'm the fourth sister. Then in the second episode, we see how dogmatic and rage-filled she is, that she has totally bought what the Inquisitorius is selling. She's like, to prevent chaos, we have to destroy everything at its core. We have to rip up the weeds and the roots before they can take hold. And then in this final episode, we see that fear and that anger personified when Barriss has her enter the ice cave. And Barriss knows that even though I don't think this is supposed to be a force cave like the swamp on Dagobah, but I do think the cave represents a forced trial where Barriss lets her go into the cave and she knows she won't succeed because her anger and her fear will not be able to help her navigate the caves to find the force-sensitive child. And she gets frustrated and she starts swinging at the walls. And Barriss says, I think my favorite line in Tales of the Empire, and it calls back to a line that the fourth sister tells her, she says, "Fear is my ally." And then Barriss flips it and says, "I think fear is your master." And that is the ultimate thesis of every dark side user ever. Fear leads to hate, hate leads to anger. It's the age-old adage that Yoda talks about in the prequels, and I love that it's used in this way for Lynn's redemption. It, of course, takes Barriss giving her life for Lynn to come to realize how far she's fallen, and that the only way to get out of this hole is to recognize that she's in one. She's trapped herself in this idea that she can't escape the Empire. She can't rid herself of this burden, and Barriss helps her realize it. It's this great redemption arc that I think is more compelling than Barriss is, because it takes smaller, more incremental and nuanced steps than Barriss is, which just felt like a 180 in the second episode. I really loved it, and I love the symbolism as she walks out of the cave. The lightsaber is left in the snow behind her. We have this great shot from the ground, looking up at them, walking out of the cave, and the episode ends with a hard cut. They walk out into the sunlight, and it cuts, and it almost leaves it open-ended. We know Barriss is likely dead, but we don't need to be told that the fourth sister is fully redeemed. We just see her enter the light. We see her get out of the cave. And we know that means that she calmed her mind. She didn't use fear, hate, anger, and aggression to get out of the cave. She walked out in a much more patient state. And it said all of that without any words. And again, the Kiners with the music at the end of this is absolutely beautiful. They killed it. Unfortunately, the crux of this episode is that I think it's built on a bit of a jarring, shaky character arc for Barriss over 3 episodes. But I think Lynn is the star, actually, at the end when it's all said and done. Those are my main thoughts about Tales of the Empire. I know plenty of people have already covered, Grievous looking amazing, looking exactly like Revenge of the Sith. The lighting I already talked about, the animation, the music, all of that was really beautiful. I do want to give a shout out to the Grand Inquisitor making his animation debut in the Clone Wars style. It was so nice to see the character back in its full form. I think we can all agree that the Obi-Wan Kenobi live action version of the character was almost a parody of the character. The makeup obviously was not up to snuff, did not really represent what the character looked like. It looked very cheap. And then his usage in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series was disappointing, to say the least. And if you want to hear me talk about that more, you can go check out my Obi-Wan episodes. But in this, he was menacing, he was calculated, he was cold, he was a master of the dark side of the Force. He just conveyed so much strength in the one episode he was in, and I love his character in Rebels, and I loved him being back here in his full glory. Also, again, I want to mention the usage of blood. We see blood in the Barriss Offee episodes. In the end of Bad Batch, we see blood animated a lot more. And I think blood is going to maybe become more of a mainstay in Star Wars animation and maybe take that more mature step in the next show. I think, it's in the Acolyte poster. They use blood as the red lightsaber. So I think while I don't want Star Wars to become this gory mess of blood, I do think that there is a tasteful amount of blood that they can inject into, no pun intended, into these animated series to have them feel a bit more weighty and a bit more mature. And in the live action series, they can do that as well. Again, just wanted to shout out the blood animation because it has been something that's more prevalent in Star Wars recently. But back to my main point. My main point was just, I think Tales of the Empire, Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Bounty Hunter, wherever they go next with this, I don't think they should restrict themselves to 2 characters, 3 episodes each. I think they should say, what do we want to tell in this next season? Do we want to adapt Asajj Ventress' story from Dark Disciple? Okay, here's all 6 episodes, adapt the full story, take as much time in each episode as you need. Oh, we want to look at Luke's adventures between episodes 5 and 6 and how he goes from a naive Padawan in 5 who just lost his hand to a very confident Jedi Knight at the beginning of Return of the Jedi. Here are 6 episodes to explore that time period. Unfortunately, Disney loves cornering themselves into a structure for their TV shows. All of Star Wars live-action TV shows need to be 8-episode seasons. Andor was the outlier, I think, because Tony Gilroy was very passionate and very specific on how much time he needed and what story he wanted to tell. I think a lot of other people maybe go in and know that they only get 8 episodes, so they just write to the 8 episodes instead of writing out their entire story. Or Disney parses down their big story down to 8 episodes. Regardless, I don't think that they should restrict this creativity this much. I think Tales should be whatever Lucasfilm Animation wants it to be. And unfortunately, we already have 2 seasons under our belt with this structure, so that probably means it's locked in. But I'm hoping that they take some risks in the future because this is an experimentation ground. It's not too deep. They can really play around with the structure of these shorts. I think Visions does a much better job when it comes to short film creation because they're complete stories. Whereas, as I said before, Tales is more of these vignettes of characters' lives. And sometimes there's a tough through line to connect all of it because it's so short and there's so much time in between each of them. Whereas Visions, it's like, here's the singular theme, here's the singular message, and here's the full story in 15 minutes. And that's not to say I didn't like this. I did enjoy this overall. I just think it could have been a lot better. And I think, unfortunately, with Star Wars nowadays, there's a lot of things that could be a lot better. But since this is animation, they always come through with really great music, really great themes and messages and heart. And I think maybe that was another thing that was contributing to them having a redemption arc for Barriss. They didn't want it to be really doom and gloom for a whole series. They wanted to have some spark of hope and light in the darkness here with her having a redemption arc. That's also very fair, and I totally get that. You know, there always has to be some sort of hope in Star Wars, or else it doesn't have that same Star Wars feeling. But maybe we'll hear more about how this came to be, how they storyboarded this, how they came up with these 2 characters to explore. I could probably talk more about this, but it is 80 degrees in my apartment. My AC is not working, so I'm a mess right now. So I'm just going to wrap this up. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy Tales of the Empire, would love to hear from you. You can follow me at @star_wars_mark of balance. DM me, let's talk some Star Wars. Comment on my post. I'd love to talk about some more Star Wars with you guys. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on whatever streaming platform you're listening to this on. I would really appreciate it. And if you have any friends that enjoy Star Wars, any family that enjoys Star Wars, let them know about the podcast. I'm sure I talked about some form of Star Wars that they would enjoy. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Peace.